Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine. Just get rid of this other stuff. So where are you off to?
So today is the kindergarten zoo field trip.
Ah, what fun.
So today I'm off to the zoo with a number of 6-year-olds.
Well, do take pictures. I bet it'll be fabulous.
Yes, it will be. It's always the highlight of the year. In Florida, the animals are more active during this time because it's too hot in the summer to even move. So
Right.
going to the zoo in the summer is just a lot of like listless animals.
Yeah.
But
Well, some of them tend to be listless anyway. We were in a zoo in Thailand or in India, and it's a very big zoo, and they have huge space. The animals, a
mhm.
lot of them you can't even see. But the Siberian tiger is stretched right out full length sleeping.
Wow.
And it wasn't hot.
Yeah. We don't have, down here in Palm Beach County, we don't have a ton of variety of animals. I mean, the first time I went to the Palm Beach Zoo, there was almost like they set it up a display, but it was really just squirrels. Like, I remember saying to my husband, I'm like, if we're counting squirrels in our zoo, this is, we're living somewhere where we're not a big draw for the zoos. But you got to go down to Miami to get some of the big zoo stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you know what, zoos, I don't, they have a kind of a limited appeal. It's captive, animals.
Yeah,
You just think,
yeah,
if they're going to die out and that's the only way they're going to, remain in this world, I guess there's a logic to it. And that's one of the things of this particular zoo we went to in Gangtok was that they had, there were certain species that were becoming
hmm
so rare that they were non-existent, and they'd started to breed them and build them back up again. So that's a good purpose for a zoo.
It is. It is. We have a lot of rescue centers locally that do, I think, a lot of that because of the population, especially with sea turtles and the birds of prey. We have a good amount, and those are actually more interesting to go to.
Mhm.
They all have a story, which is kind of nice.
Oh, well, it's an outing for the kids and moms and dads, and, I'm sure it'll be fun.
Yes, it will be. All right. So I adjusted. I made those last couple edits and kind of added that stuff in. I don't know if we want to go over it again, I'm really happy with where it's at.
I am too. It's a very nice piece. I think they're going to love it.
Okay, good. It's a little nerve-wracking to kind of let it out to the larger world,
You
but
don't need to worry, Michelle. It's a lovely piece of work, and it, in my opinion, meets all of the requirements. So I think all you're going to get is people saying to you, have you thought about this or have you thought about that? And
right.
generally, your answer to that is next project. Unless you want to get into starting a new line of thought, or they may see a gap that we've missed, in
Right.
which case, that's great.
Yeah. And so I was looking at the submission process. So I think I'm going to take your advice and I'll click, your name down there and then just, talk about how we've already worked together. And if they feel that if somebody else should review, then that would work. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely. But you're putting it in the public space in the submission process, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I'll have a look for it to make sure that it's up there. And
Okay.
you just need to really email Marie Huxtable,
Okay.
say, this is who you'd like for reviewers, and let her decide what. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
They may feel because we've worked together, they would like 3 fresh sets of eyes on it. So
And
whatever.
that's fine too.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in it, so they'll see that we've worked together anyway.
They will. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I just wondered if you might, do you have a minute?
Yeah.
When do you have to leave?
Oh, I booked I have probably not till like 8:50, so I've got time.
So I had a couple of things that were kind of curious to me. So Pretty early in this process, you made a presentation of the earlier version of the paper to a state conference of some sort.
Yes, the data part, where I kind of more the quantitative part.
Okay.
Yes, so I presented that to a state conference, and then talked about some of my hypotheses about how to have your online medium kind of match your your goals, I guess, for teaching. So so I sucked out that part and worked on that with an audience there.
And what kind of a response did you get?
Well, it was interesting. I got the response. People were interested in the data part, but I actually had 2 or 3 people, in the room who were like, well, tell me more about how you analyzed your practice and tell me more about the living theory stuff, because I had was still feeling a little bit vulnerable about presenting that out and felt much more comfortable leading with numbers. And then kind of embedded some of this is how I got to the point of looking at that, for context. And a number of people were like, I really love this idea of trying to figure out who you are and then look to see if that is in your practice, both, online. And it was interesting because I felt like I went in there trying to hide it a little because I wasn't confident in it, and they picked right up on it, and had some really good comments. So that was actually very validating for me because I was unsure about how that would play out at because the conference was FERA, so it was the state division of AERA. So some of the folks in the state that are involved in FERA are a little bit, I would say, more quantitative in nature.
Sure.
That sit on that board. So it was interesting to see how it would play out. But yeah, I got really good feedback. It gave me a little bit of a boost to talk about that more.
Well, part of living theory is this public accountability. Sharing what you think you know and mm-hmm. getting kind of responses back to hold you accountable to the claims you're making. So that you didn't write about that, and I thought about it after the fact, and I thought that's an interesting area to pursue. That sort of how you felt presenting that, and how you probably didn't want to talk about living theory because you weren't very far into your understanding of it. And then find out that people really want to hear more about that part of it.
Yeah, it kind of reaffirms some of my feelings is that, I don't know, sometimes in academia you feel like, or at least I feel like, you have to lead brain first instead of heart first. Mm-hmm. And, you get that reaffirmation a lot with, if you're sitting around a room and you're thinking, you're sitting around a table and you're thinking, well, this doesn't feel right, or I'm not sure this is good for our students. But if we don't have a logical explanation of why that may be, it feels fluffy. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot to say, put your feelings away to the side, because we need to concentrate here on our theoretical frameworks and making sure we do good research and making sure, all of these kind of, for lack of a better word, old-fashioned, really, positivistic views of what research can and should be and what counts as research. And so I guess, part of my own living theory journey was really thinking about who that serves and why that still exists, and finding a place for my own heart to matter in that space. And so it's very reaffirming to feel like everybody in, I feel like now in every room that I talk about this in, there's 2 or 3 people who are just waiting to hear it, just like I was. So I try to find out, who those people are. Very
good. Well, I mean, that's, most of us have some kind of experience like you've had in this process. Mm-hmm. And, you go in sometimes assuming too that people don't want to hear about caring and love, right, and responding to students' needs. And we find out that in fact, many people do. And some have been afraid to talk about it, Oh, we
Mhm.
don't talk about values around here, We talk about, course objectives and
Right. Yeah, my doctoral students just finished this assignment where, we were working on their kind of teaching philosophies or teaching frameworks, something that they might need to provide should they go and interview for a job somewhere, or just even to be able to ground themselves to figure out where they are with their own teaching so that they can understand what kind of researcher they are. And so that's kind of where I brought in some of the living theory stuff after we had talked about a number of different, we kind of did some deep dive into some content areas historically. So we talked about that and kind of brought it all together. So they were presenting them over the last 2 weeks, and we were having great conversations about their own philosophies. And at the end of it on Tuesday night, I said, what's so interesting is if somebody did like an analysis of what we've talked about for the last 2 weeks, the clear themes would be there was a theme of joy that was running through
wow.
their frameworks. It was on half of their frameworks about the importance of having joy in a classroom. And then there were 3 or 4 who had a theme of safety that was on their frameworks. So I thought, man, if somebody could come here and see this work, this group of budding scholars talking about joy and safety and love. And I mean, one of my students, he has an early childhood background. He created his whole framework like a solar system with love right in the center.
Whoa.
It was so cool. And I said, somebody would feel so hopeful to hear this group of budding scholars talk about what is important to them. And of course, I did this exact same assignment last year at this time, and that was not the outcome. And I can't help but think it's because I'm in a different place. Uh-huh. I am maybe unconsciously, but also consciously honoring talking about their values and why that's important. And they've now bubbled up and they found a place in an academic piece. And it was very reaffirming, because I felt like, okay, they feel it too. Like I created a space and they rose to the challenge. So it's exciting. It really is exciting.
I'll send you Liz Campbell's PhD. She just graduated in February. And her teaching philosophy, this is kind of drawing all the threads together at the end, is teaching philosophy, be love.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, you'd love that. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me.
Love this doctoral thesis. Oh my God.
You think I could share it with my doctoral students?
Oh, yeah. It's up on Jack's website.
Okay. All right.
I was thinking, the way you could have done that, if you wanted to think about it another time, is videotaping those lessons, because then you could go back and with the students, you could do that kind of analysis. And then they could, go to the next step. So, how am I living my values and incorporate that into their research?
And I think I'm about ready to do that. One of my students, who is a district administrator in one of our local school districts, she came into my office the other day. She said, "I have a present for you." I said, "What is it?" And it's a swivel. Have you worked with a swivel before?
No.
So it's a video camera that I think I wear something, but it tracks my movement.
Oh yeah, I've heard about it.
Yeah, so it stays focused on me. So she says, I rented it for the whole semester. Now this was Linda, who was in some of my earlier videos.
Oh.
I thought you could play with it. It would be like a great thing to play with, for the rest of the semester. So I'm going to figure out how it works and then tape a couple sessions just to play around with it and see what I get. And
fabulous.
That's very fun. Yeah, I'm excited about playing with it. So she just showed up with it and said, I found some in the county warehouse.
Oh my God, isn't that awesome?
What else is in there?
Got any other video cameras?
I know, this is an expensive piece of equipment. What else is gathering dust in the county warehouse?
So
it's cool.
It is very cool. So I'm trying to write this paper on kind of my philosophy around helping people create their own living theories,
Yeah.
and I've pulled out the emails and included the videotapes, and I'm probably within a couple of weeks of being willing to share, how far I've got. It's still kind of, it's a hodgepodge stage where
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
coming in and you get them down because you don't want to lose them, but
Right.
they'll flow. I think I gave you the kind of the topic. It may be a bit long, but anyway, that's kind of the topic I'm working on. And as you know, there's a limit in words here, so I can't get too far off the track,
Mm-hmm.
which is just always a problem with this, is kind of getting it, in a size that is manageable without
Right.
getting into a PhD thesis. So I'd appreciate if you'd have a look at it in a couple of
Yeah.
weeks. Okay. One
So
of my
I'm excited about sharing this. And do you think that after you're done working on that, do we want to at some point transfer over to how that shapes up for Arna?
Correct. That's exactly where I was going next.
Perfect.
So I think that will help me kind of focus my thoughts. And then when we put the two papers together and we look at the documentation we've got, see what we've got for presentation, probably just to talk about, what we've learned in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was thinking about Arna the other day and this idea of like these ripples of mentorship, because I know, I imagine you kind of like this fairy godmother that you must have all these little lives that you are touching, sending out like these little, a little bit of loving kindness here, a little bit of loving kindness here. And, it has that ripple effect because, I think about just in my own local context, the lives and the students that I've touched. And then now they're going into classrooms, validating their students. And it really is, it's an exciting work because it feels so true. And it really feels like it could make, you could change how somebody views themselves and you're validating their feelings. And it feels like the most important work that I've done.
Or maybe they come to understand, who they are, what they stand for.
Yeah.
And you give them a little bit of faith that this is something that's okay to do.
Yeah. And publicly, because even in like one of my closest friends down here, is a mental health counselor. And so we talk all the time about, the similarities and differences in our jobs. And what she does in kind of changing people's lives is hidden behind a door, and not discussed about. There's an oath that she's not allowed to talk about it.
No.
And it, through this process, started to get me thinking about, why are we hiding these conversations behind doors? And what does that also reaffirm about our society and how comfortable we are talking about who we are, why we are, and how important it is to be who we are if we're hiding behind doors. And I understand I understand the reasoning, but it makes me feel more passionately about having those conversations out in public. For the sake of our own mental health. I feel in a much better place being able to be more authentically who I am than having to lead with my brain and have the heart follow. I prefer the other way, and it feels better.
Mm-hmm. Well, that actually one of this woman that just got her PhD was in a master's group with me, and she coined the language of loved into learning, that she felt in my classroom that she was loved into learning. And that's a pretty amazing way of seeing, teaching and learning, isn't it? And
it really is.
that's where she started being more open with her students and with her colleagues and friends to talk about love and to
Yeah.
talk about how that is such an important part of getting the brain to take in the information. I mean, when it opens the body up and the mind to more, I think, to learn faster and better and more deeply.
Yeah, we talk a lot about creating a space that lowers the risk, so people can feel free to learn more. And I always I think I interpreted that as, telling students, don't worry about the grades.
Oh yeah.
About the process. But I think I think lowering the risk might be the wrong terminology. I think it's more about creating a space where they are comfortable and feel loved and feel honored and valued. And that is what creates the ability for your mind to take risks and leaps, because you feel safe.
That's right.
And it's funny that my students have said a number of times this semester, especially before they're going to say something where they're being vulnerable, they've said, but this is a safe space, right? This is a safe space, right? Yes, it's a safe space.
Well, I mean, when they're afraid, they won't take those kind of chances to be real.
Yeah.
And so it takes a while to get that kind of security feeling, and that there's people there that care and love you, and that it's okay to show your vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it has to come from, the teacher or the facilitator. That has to be established by the teacher or facilitator. I mean, because people won't assume that that's safe.
Did you ever run, especially when you were doing this work early on, were there facets of, your career or things that you were involved in that you found more resistance to, or certain types of situations where you found more resistance than others?
I was a superintendent of education, so
Yes.
I mean, my whole day was full of obstacles and resistance.
That's true.
So, and I mean, I brought this teacher research into the district, and I had many teachers and administrators who came to conduct their own research. But it wasn't, not everybody, but it was a critical mass. And but there's always that fear at the beginning that, I'll show people my weaknesses and then, I won't be in control anymore,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I mean, getting budget for that was a struggle every year, because it takes some release time for people to get time to think and write and collaborate. And
how did you organize I was just in a meeting yesterday where one of the schools that I work with is looking to apply for a large teacher research grant. And so we were kind of brainstorming. How did you organize your program?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, taking from the teacher standpoint, the teacher received time release.
Mm-hmm.
And that time release was with a facilitator. And the facilitator basically taught the skills kind of just in time. So as we did, we start out with what you feel passionate about and your stories and so on. And then, as they got more comfortable with, then you brought in more of the language of research, like, claims to know and data to support and, evidence to support your claims to know and validation, and without starting out there, we didn't start out with the academic language, and always starting with their stories, not other people's theories, their theories.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they get comfortable with their own theories about who they are and what they stand for in the world around them, and kind of develop a worldview, then it's okay then to look at what other people say about something. But you can't
Mm.
start with that because it takes away their confidence in their own embodied knowledge.
Mm.
So anyway, and then they had group sessions all over the board in different areas, and facilitators. I mean, I did that myself to start with,
Right.
and then as it grew, I couldn't do it all myself. But all of the facilitators had done their own living theory research. But I've written this all up, so if you wanted to,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's going back quite a few years now. But I mean, and then one of the boards that I did the master's cohort in, that board, the women in that group then did their own group across the county. They called it BARN, Blue Water Action Research Network.
Was that one of the groups that Skyped in when you and Jack presented at Alara?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
That was Kathy and Crystal. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was, we were talking about this yesterday about how to support teacher research, because I worked with this group of 9 teachers in the fall, and we worked in a pretty kind of traditional format, you know, where they were looking at their own practice, but really learning how to be researchers and really focusing on studying something in their practice, but not their practice as a whole, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, more how am I running my small groups? How is this curriculum working for me? So as I think about a larger program, how it would look programmatically, I'm starting to think about how they could structure it to really study their own practice, so in a way that's sustainable. Because you're not always studying something new, like an intervention all the time. But I hear what you're saying. If your focus is more on studying who you are, then everything else, all the interventions will come and go connected to that.
It's kind of the base. I mean,
Yeah.
But I mean, then it becomes part of who you are. So all the time you're looking at what you're doing and saying, okay, how could I do that better? And then you engage others to help you. And I mean, ideally the students is who you get to engage to help you.
Right.
Or you get the students to do their own little action research. So, I mean, I should show you Kathy Griffin's work. She was one of the ones that came into the Skype, and she had her grade 5 kids, and they were doing questions like, I'm not very good in group work, so I need to improve how I work in a group. And then once they'd have a question, then they do start doing the same kind of analysis that we do with whole classrooms or whole systems, you know. So what is it I do? What do I need to do differently? And then how do I know if I've improved?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I had one teacher who had kindergarten students doing it.
Kindergarten students are probably great for that.
Really?
They have no filter about what to say and not to say.
That's right. So, and the videotape there is ideal because kids don't write that well, but they actually speak quite well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get into permission issues there, but we've never had a parent say no.
Yeah, and this is a laboratory school connected to the
right.
so they're really, all their permissions are, you know, I think that's part of the package, signing up. But we have a huge, in the state of Florida, we have a huge push right now for socio-emotional learning. I think
that's great,
legislation, huh?
Isn't that great? It
is. I mean, it's a little bit reactive. You know, we had a huge school shooting last year down in South Florida. So a lot of the legislation came as from the advocacy work of the groups following that shooting. And the time is right for a lot of this. And the time is right to already create spaces where people can talk about who they are. So I have to think about how this kind of all can come together. It would be nice to be able to work on a multi-year project with this group. That would be nice.
Okay, I know that you have some time pressures. I'd love to chat with you all morning, Michelle. So I'll look for your page
Yeah.
up in the
Yeah.
submission area, and I'll follow the comments from the reviewers, see what you're getting from them, and
Yeah. I can't thank you enough, really. I mean, it's, you know, it really is. I can't say it took me in a different direction, but it cleared out all of the weeds so that I could see the direction that I wanted to go in. You know, I knew I needed to do something, but it really, I mean, it really was like it was a lovely, lovely process. So I really can't thank you enough. I mean,
well, I'm going to leave you with a question for another time, and that is,
okay.
how could I do it better? How can I improve? Because that's always what I need to
Yeah.
know.
Well, we'll talk about that for Arna.
Okay. So let me know when you want to talk about the proposal process.
Okay, yeah, let me get this this manuscript off, and then we'll start to organize it. I've never been, so I'm gonna follow your lead as far as what the audience is like and that sort of.
Oh, they're not very nice group. Very nice
Okay.
group, and very much on the same page. Not always self-study
Right.
of action research. Sometimes it's studying others, which, you know, is not kind of what we mean by action research.
Right. All right. Interesting. Okay. You have a lovely day. Thank you for meeting early, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, have fun at the zoo.
Thank you.